And we start with that breaking news in the FBI's new line of questioning into Hillary Clinton's email server. ABC News has just learned that federal investigators have obtained a warrant to look deeper into a laptop. That laptop belonging to Anthony Weiner, the estranged husband of Clinton's top aide, Huma Abedin. Emails on it may be linked to Clinton's private server. Today at a Florida church, Clinton campaigning and promising she will stay the course. But our latest national tracking poll showing Clinton's lead has evaporated. Clinton just 1 point ahead of Trump. A week ago, she had a 12-point lead.
Tonight, Hillary Clinton fighting to shake off that October shocker.
Everyone is knocked down in life. What matters is whether you get back up.
With 9 days to go, Clinton now targeting a new opponent, FBI Director James Comey.
Some of you may have heard about a letter that the FBI Director sent out yesterday.
She's questioning his motivation and demanding answers about his review of new emails possibly linked to her private server. Emails discovered on the laptop of disgraced former Congressman Anthony Weiner, the estranged husband of Clinton's top aide Huma Abedin. Weiner now under investigation for allegedly sexting a teen. Her campaign launching a coordinated strike.
It's just extremely puzzling. Why would you release information that is so incomplete when you haven't even seen the material yourself?
It was long on innuendo, short on facts. So we're calling on Mr. Comey to come forward and explain what's at issue here.
Let's just get all the information out there on the table. There's hypotheticals flying all over the place.
Meanwhile, the Republican camp is reveling in the disclosure. They've praised Comey for his decision and claim that attempts to keep the probe quiet was again evidence of a rigged system.
Yet now it's reported that the Department of Justice is fighting the FBI. That's because the Department of Justice is trying so hard to protect Hillary Clinton. They didn't try to protect our generals. They didn't try to protect a lot of other people.
Nobody died in a 6.6 magnitude earthquake that struck central Italy on Sunday morning because almost everyone was already gone. They left last week when twin earthquakes struck the same region along the border between the regions of Umbria and Marche. Sound like a pattern? It certainly feels like one. One may ask why there are so many earthquakes in Italy lately, but the real question, according to seismologists, is why haven't there been this many earthquakes for such a long time? In 1783, 5 major earthquakes over 6.5 in magnitude struck Calabria over the course of 2 months, killing more than 50,000 people. Gianluca Valencise, a noted seismologist with Italy's National Institute for Geophysics and Volcanology, told Reuters that the recent events in central Italy are far more normal than the relative quiet the country has enjoyed for the last several centuries. He told Reuters that there would be definitely aftershocks, and likely strong ones, for at least a few more weeks.
Locals who are still in the region say they're desperate. We've not been given tents, we've not been given houses, we've not been given caravans. For the houses, we'll have to wait until the spring. I don't understand where we'll live this winter if we're not given caravans or alternative accommodation. We have to find somewhere. We can't go into tents or stay in our cars. Look at this weather, it's far too cold. We have a saying, when faced with an impossible choice, we either eat soup or we jump from the window.
Now, believe it or not, in the early 1800s, a series of earthquakes in northwest Tennessee shook the ground so hard that church bells rang on the East Coast and sidewalks cracked in Washington, D.C.
You can only imagine what it was like here in Tennessee, and it could happen again.
215 years ago, the early settlers were terrified by the violent shaking. Large fissures opened up in the ground. Some even witnessed the Mississippi River appearing to flow backwards. Large areas of land sank, and even new lakes were formed, like Reelfoot Lake. The earthquakes were caused by the New Madrid Fault Zone, located in northwest Tennessee, southeast Missouri, and northeast Arkansas. And that fault zone is still active today.
If we have an 1811, 1812 size event, maybe 7 to 7.5 in that range on the Richter scale, we're talking about possibly 3,000, 4,000 deaths.
What would happen to bridges, dams, our drinking water, the electrical power grid, and even natural gas pipelines?
We're looking at about 2,600 bridges in Middle Tennessee and West Tennessee that will be seismically affected. In other words, will be unusable.
And our dams?
They're only built to about 5.0 to 5.5. Most of the TVAs, most of the Corps of Engineers dams. And, you know, we're talking about a 7.0 event. It's the worst case scenario for TVA and the Corps of Engineers.
And we take our drinking water for granted. You may not have that. Our pumping stations are not protected against earthquakes. Now, about natural gas pipelines.
There are going to be ruptures, there are going to be fires, there are going to be explosions.
But the loss of the electrical power grid could have the biggest impact on our lives.
It could take us 6 months, a year, 2 years in some cases to restore power after a New Madrid event. It will affect everybody in the eastern half of the United States.
And you can forget all about cell phones. The towers are not seismically protected, so most of them are going to fail. And without electricity, how are you going to charge your battery anyway? So with all of these possibilities, you and your family need to be prepared.
Lithuania has brought out a new version of its civil defense guide. It advises civilians on what to do in the event of a Russian invasion. It's a 75-page brochure. It's set to be distributed in schools and libraries and also published online in the Baltic state. Lithuanians have been told to have a strong will to resist, to make life difficult for any potential invader. So let's go through a few of the tips and the warnings being given out to the general public there and what to be aware of. First of all, seems to survive Russian aggression, Lithuanians need to know the difference between various types of Russian tanks. And if you didn't know, there's a beginner's guide to it. Also about Kalashnikovs, how they vary. It's also necessary to spot mines and grenades, apparently, and to single them out. And a guide, too, in this brochure for civilians, how to become resistance fighters, how to dress, even how to sleep like a guerrilla if you're caught outside, but you've still got to carry on the good fight. There we go. There's more details there. So this is the third such brochure published in the country since the outbreak of fighting in eastern Ukraine back in 2014.
A large chunk of space rock is coming dangerously close to the vicinity of the Earth, but scientists are sure it won't collide with our planet, thanks to a new NASA tool designed to detect potentially hazardous spacefly bees. The incoming rock was detected by the NASA-funded Panoramic Survey Telescope and Rapid Response System, PanSTARRS, on Maui, Hawaii, on October 26.
In other news, the United States has ordered the families of personnel working in its Consulate General in Istanbul to leave amid simmering anti-American sentiments in Turkey. The U.S. State Department says it has obtained information that American citizens might come under attack by extremist groups in Istanbul. This is the second such notice issued in less than a week. On Monday, the department warned of increased threats from terrorist organizations across Turkey and advised Americans to avoid traveling to the country, especially its southeast. Turkey has been plagued by a string of deadly bomb attacks in recent months, escalating tensions between Ankara and Washington in the wake of a failed coup in Turkey last July have also fueled anti-American sentiments.
A German couple could face court for refusing to let their child take part in a school trip to a mosque. They say it was for ideological reasons, but the school still slapped them with a €300 truancy fine. When the parents contested that, the local prosecutor got involved. Well, the school explained that the visit to the mosque was part of a geography lesson and had nothing to do with religious education, but the child's parents weren't convinced and other people weren't too. school's principal defended the decision to fine the parents. She pointed to the fact that Muslim parents would have to let their children attend compulsory sex education classes or swimming lessons, even if they oppose the idea. Here's what the family's lawyer had to say about it.
The parents were particularly concerned about the emotional well-being of their child. They wanted to avoid the danger of Islamic indoctrination. Visits to houses of God are not, in my opinion, part of the state's educational remit. For us, it's important that these things are judged according to one rule, and that in no cases should Islam be privileged. There are reports of just that. A class visited a Christian church, the Muslim parents protested, and that was accepted.
Australia may soon pass a law that bans illegal asylum seekers for life. The country already has a firm policy that bars migrants who illegally come by boat from settling in Australia. But this law would keep them from ever entering again, even if they were a tourist conducting business or were married to an Australian citizen. This move is just one of several in Australia's controversial fight against illegal immigration. Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull said, "You need the clearest of clear messages. This is a battle of will between the Australian people, represented by their government, and these criminal gangs of people smugglers." The law could be used against the 1,300 people currently held at detention camps on 2 islands in the Pacific. Most journalists haven't gotten access to the camps, but an estimated 72% of people detained there are designated refugees. Since 2014, no boat has succeeded in smuggling asylum seekers past the Australian Navy's blockade. Opponents argue the bigger issue for the Australian government should be helping those in camps find permanent places to resettle.
Dramatic scenes took place outside the European Council in Brussels ahead of the signing of the landmark CETA trade pact. A group of protesters managed to enter a restricted area to demonstrate against the comprehensive and economic trade agreement between Canada and the EU. Around 15 people were taken away by police. After 7 years of negotiations, the European Union and Canada have signed the landmark Comprehensive and Economic Trade Agreement, or CETA. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau flew to the Belgian capital to sign the trade pact. All EU member states reached a consensus on Friday. It's hoped the deal, which removes 98% of tariffs, will bring a trade increase worth some €10.9 billion a year.
Authorities are currently investigating the cause of a fire that burned through about 400 acres near the Native American leaders, activists, and supporters who are protesting against a North Dakota oil pipeline they allege is threatening water and sacred lands. The blaze, which originated on private property in rural Morton County, was put up with the help of helicopters that were able to drop water on it. Authorities have not officially released any information indicating whether the fire was purposely set or if it was related to the protests a few miles away.
It was about 12:40, something like that. We were visiting in front of my teepee, and a friend of mine, Bob Oliver, he was standing there, and he said, "What's that?" So he looked up on that hilltop, and there was a car, and he just saw headlights. There was a car up there. So we started looking at him, and pretty soon that car stopped. It was driving erratically, stopped, and then you saw that fire light up. Then that car started taking off. So we saw that car take off, and it sounded like it hit something hard, like it bottomed out. We don't go up on those hilltops, you know. So to see a vehicle up there was a red flag for us. We said, what's going on there? And that's what brought our attention, especially there at 1 o'clock in the morning, out there kind of driving erratically over the hills. You just see headlights starting to move.
Next tonight, the internet prank hacking smartphones across America, phones flooding 911 with bogus calls, knocking emergency call centers offline. People in need unable to get through, and those hacked phones keep calling even when you hang up.
911, what are you reporting?
It was an otherwise normal night in Thurston County, Washington, when 911 operators thought they had a catastrophe on their hands.
And all of a sudden the phones just went off the hook.
There was no emergency. It was a hoax fueled by a malicious hack taking over people's cell phones when they clicked on this link being spread on Twitter. Andrea Jara clicked and lost control of her own phone.
It just started calling 911 like crazy, and I couldn't stop. I just kept clicking the end button and nothing was happening. It just kept recalling.
She's in Florida, where 911 operators were also hit. the Broward County Sheriff among those warning of the major public safety issue. In Washington state tonight, an 18-year-old man has been arrested for investigation of data service interference. Police say he claims he spread the link after getting it elsewhere. Law enforcement are warning tonight the same link is being spread nationwide, and once you click, the only way to stop your phone from calling 911 is to fully power it off.
Tomorrow is Halloween, and everyone has ghosts, vampires, and monsters on their brain. But what's even scarier than monsters is credit card debt. Overall, U.S. credit card debt is $729 billion, and researchers say it's going to get even higher. That means, if divided evenly, each U.S. citizen with a credit card would owe about $15,675. Research also shows that 1 out of every 3 people have nothing in their savings account. Experts suggest Americans need to be more organized and responsible with their finances.
Friday, Puerto Rico reported its first case of a baby born with microcephaly as a result of Zika. Officials say the medical condition was not identified until the mother was 8 months pregnant. The newborn has severe brain defects, hearing and vision problems, and remains in the hospital in the capital of San Juan. 31,500 Zika cases have been reported in Puerto Rico, including in over 2,400 pregnant women. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention expects an influx of babies born with severe deformities in Puerto Rico in upcoming months.
Vietnam has reported the first case of microcephaly in the country, likely to be connected to the Zika virus. According to the nation's health ministry, on Sunday, a 4-month-old baby whose mother was diagnosed with the mosquito-borne disease was found in the province of Dak Lak. If confirmed, this would be the second case of Zika linked in Southeast Asia, the first case having been confirmed in Thailand. Vietnam so far has reported a total of 9 cases of Zika infection, and health authorities say more cases are expected to be confirmed in the coming days. Earlier this month, Vietnam raised the threat level for Zika and stepped up monitoring of pregnant women amid growing outbreaks in the region.
We often call him a miracle.
Seeing 3-year-old Dylan Askin playing with his older brother, you'd never know just months ago his parents were preparing to say goodbye. Last Christmas, he was diagnosed with a rare type of lung cancer. His condition deteriorated, and at Easter, his family were getting ready for the worst.
Over the course of a few days, they kept sort of having conversations with us, sort of saying that you need to be prepared that he's not going to make it.
But then a consultant noticed his blood results were different, and his mum spotted movement. His older brother, who'd already gone to say goodbye, found a timely comparison.
And when we were explaining that Dylan was getting better to him, he turned around and he said, "Oh, so he's just like Jesus, he's risen from the dead."
Dylan's still undergoing chemotherapy, although he looks, and his parents say often behaves, like he's never been unwell.
We find ourselves crying in the supermarket or random places because we just catch Dylan doing stuff that a normal 3-year-old will be doing, and it's almost like he nearly wasn't doing this.
His treatment scheduled to end in March, almost exactly a year after he nearly didn't make it. And for everyone involved, there's only one way to describe his case.
We often call him a miracle.
I mean, the head of PICU actually referred to him as a miracle, so when you've got a doctor referring to him as a miracle, it's pretty hard not to
say it. Yeah.